so you got your degree and then it was straight to St. Arnold's from there?
Yes. Yeah. Moved from Buffalo to Houston right out of college. And whew, that was a culture shock, temperature shock, all of it. But it was really fun. It was cool to be in such a big city. And St. Arnold was a very large brewery at that time,
Yeah.
compared to other ones around them. So it was a great place to get my start.
Sure, sure. And even just like you said, even the climate change, but before we went live, I was talking about how, I think Buffalo it's, I don't think anybody thinks it's Midwest, but weather-wise, it's certainly Midwest. And then going to the Houston area, that's wild.
Yeah, wild is the word for it. I remember the first day I went to the brewery, was getting a tour before I even started working there. And we were inside walking around, and then it downpoured for 5 seconds. And then the humidity was I was like, oh my God, I can't breathe. This humidity, I could cut it with a knife. So that was the first day.
Sure. Well, and so how long were you in Texas or at St. Arnold's?
6 years.
6 years.
Yeah.
6 years.
So they had an established lab program, so I got to learn a lot there, and yeah, it was a great place.
That's interesting to me because my first reaction is 6 years. That's a solid amount of time. And now I'm thinking about it through a brewer's lens where I know that, we tend to be a bit of a transient population. Did you find a lot of turnover? Transient makes it sound like hobos, maybe like a railroad thing.
Yeah.
But that's not what well, kind of, but maybe. But But did you find that there was a lot of turnover on the lab side as well in the industry?
Not as much, because again, Houston, St. Arnold had an established lab program.
Yeah.
We were one of maybe 5 or 6 when I first started that actually had a lab program, and theirs was well and above a lot of the other breweries. So I feel like with lab, you kind of find a place and you'll stick with it. Where brewers like Houston, there were 40 something breweries. If they're not, satisfied where they're at, or they feel like they've reached their peak where they're at, they can hop around to other ones. But again, with St. Arnold, there were so many different facets for me to learn. Yeah. So it was a good place to stay at, to really focus on microbiology, start running their sensory panel by myself, all those things. So yeah, I feel like there's a little less turnover with lab programs for that reason.
Well, and that's first of all, it's a smart move. But also it's a testament to, and not everybody's at that stage, but I do think it's really important to, from a management ownership standpoint, it's important to have that viewpoint of we have to provide opportunity for growth for our people. Now, with a larger company, that kind of comes a little bit more easily, right? Because there's more bases that need to be covered and things like that. So, but that's interesting. Yeah. Because 6 years is not necessarily a short time. So what is that path like in a brewery like St. Arnold? So you kind of hire in at what level, and then what are some of the steps that you kind of accumulate skill set wise?
Yeah. So the nice thing, kind of what you were saying, about St. Arnold and employee retention, was that they did value continuing education. So kind of going in, learn as a lab tech, learning all the basics, learning all the microorganisms that can show up, things like that, the sensory side of things. I wasn't super into drinking beer before that, but then once I got there, it was like, okay, all these sensory aspects are so cool. So really deep diving into that. And then just kind of following the thread. And they were really great about that. Okay, you have obviously interest in yeast health, propagation. Let's go with that. So getting all these little projects. Yeah. So starting off as a lab tech. And then by the time I left there, I was really focused on yeast health and propagation and kind of managing fermentations, trying to optimize fermentations and scheduling and things like that.
Can you talk to me about one experience that was a really big positive for you while you were there, kind of through a career lens, right? Whether or not it was something it was a light bulb going off, or it was a boost that you needed.
I would say either doing my Cicerone because
Mm.
again, they were super supportive with that. So studying for it, passing that, and just too, it was kind of fun how supportive they were after passing it. You know, everyone
Mm.
congratulated, and it was like, okay, this is a really cool
Sure.
accomplishment. And
Sure.
then, kind of on that thread, but more of a career technical side, was yeast propagation. So I
Yeah.
worked with another brewer, and we built a propagation system with existing equipment at the brewery. So kind of
Yeah.
a proof of concept, like, all right, before we buy this crazy expensive propagator, let's see if we can do it. So all of
Yeah.
those steps, like I learned so much through that, learned so much by working with that particular brewer and, you know, helping to cut costs and things. That really started, you know, kind of sparked another level of interest for me, where then I was tracking fermentations,
Yeah.
you know, really diving into yeast health. And I've carried that on through, you know, my subsequent places of employment. And actually, last month I gave a talk about, you know, wrangling London ale yeast.
Yeah.
So yeah, still to this day, it's like, okay, that's kind of my thread. That's been my thing that I'm very interested in, and helping brewers to kind of understand that.
So sometimes people that are on like the smaller pub side or like a smaller distro side place, they see a larger production house and they say, who wants to make the same beer over and over and over
Hmm.
again? The flip side, and not that I'm saying that that's what was going on with St. Arnold's, but I know they're making a lot of beer,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So, but there's also something to be said about having a massive volume of reps on your brew house, in
Yes.
your cellar, right? And
Hmm.
because you can't, if say I have a, you know, a seasonal Belgian beer that I'm working on, and I can only really brew it once a year.
Hmm.
Well, I mean, you're waiting. You might as well be making wine at that point, like
Exactly.
with the amount of times that you can rep that out, right?
Yeah.
So that large production environment is really perfect for
Hmm.
digging into those things.
Exactly. Where then from a data standpoint, you can compare, you know, the same type of batch. You can really kind of make an experiment out of it where, all right, we're going to
Yeah.
change one variable on this batch. Everything else is the same. So you get a little more research capability and
Mhm.
data. Where if you're doing all those one offs, that's tricky, where you could have something really cool that comes out and then you brew it again the next year. It's like, oh, it was kind of different, not quite the same.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell what the factor was
Yeah.
sometimes.
No, absolutely.